Three, two, one, here we go. Rainman's Take podcast. Observations on the world we live in. My take on current events and other topics of interest. Also interviews with some really cool people. So let's get the conversation going. All right. Hey, everybody. It's the Rain Man. Welcome back. My guest today is Bruce Laughlin. Bruce, how you doing, brother?
Doing great, man. Good to be here. SoCal's beautiful. A little drizzly, but unusual. But it's awesome.
I love it. Bruce used to live out here, and for the last, probably 15 years, you guys have been in Texas?
A little less, 10-ish.
Nice.
Seems like 15.
Yeah, exactly. So Jimmy's back in town, which is very cool. So I thought I'd have him on before I get going with the conversation here, because I know it's going to be great. If you are part of Rainman's Take, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I know you're going to love the content. So if you could go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That way it'll help me get this content out to more people and help with the YouTube algorithm so that we can continue to grow Rainman's Take. So with that being said, the reason why I wanted to have Jimmy on, as most of you know, actually, I'm sorry, Bruce, his Marine call sign was JoJo. I just happen to call him Jimmy. So it's going to bounce back and forth between Bruce, JoJo, and Jimmy. And so I apologize about the confusion up front. But the reason why I wanted to have Bruce on, and for people who have been a part of Rain Man Take for a long time, know that I've had Bruce on twice before. Once as part of my my Warfighter series, talking to Marine veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan. And then I also had him on to kind of give me his expert analysis on his time in Pakistan, which was one of his last billets before he got out of the Marine Corps. But the reason why I wanted to have him back on today was the fact that this week basically marks the 20th anniversary of the invasion into Iraq and the eventual overtaking of Baghdad. And Bruce was part of a helicopter squadron that was basically right there, front and center in that in the initial push into Baghdad. So I figured on the 20th anniversary, and he's in town visiting, I thought it'd be a great time to just kind of touch base on a couple of specific points I wanted to get to. So thanks very much for joining me, JoJo. How you doing, brother?
Love it. Love being here.
Cool.
Yep.
So real quick, you were today met up with a couple of your squadron mates earlier. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, fortunately, we got to visit the old squadron, HMLA 367 Scarface guys. The CO was, I know this sounds like I'm placating him, super gracious to allow us to come just kind of troll around. Todd Miller, we're all alumni from Scarface from the 90s and then early 2000s and so forth. And but you know, the group CO, Nate Marble, he was there. Todd's there. He's an 06. Brad Legoski, he's an 06. I'm trolling along with some of these guys. And so the CO was gracious. The squadron, the people look great. I know this sounds like like an old guy talking here.
Well, it is an old guy talking here.
But they look good. Equipment looks great. The hangar looks good and all those things. You're like, man, you're saying the stuff that like, it didn't look this good when I was there.
Yeah.
And then you're looking at all the old plaques and you're seeing the names of the characters and stuff. And then the stories start coming out. So, but Scarface looks good. Those guys look, they look awesome. Legacy Squadron, you know, you're a gunfighter.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
Love it. Love it. All right. So this is what I wanted to touch on because you had mentioned this last night and you've also mentioned it in the past, but I want to specifically, just because I want people out there to understand exactly what, because I even don't know what it was like, because by the time I got into the country, the madness had pretty much slowed down and it was almost more of a police state than it was an actual invasion.
Yep.
And what I wanted to talk about was you said you had one day where it was 18 hours and you were going out, shooting, coming back. And so I want to talk specifically about that day because the primary reason why is you rarely hear about situations like that. You only read about them in the history books. I mean, when we were learning about the Vietnam War, the helicopter war in Vietnam, that's what it was like. But you guys were doing almost the exact same thing. So tell me a little bit about the invasion and then kind of what that whole tempo was like.
Initially, it was the uncertainty of waiting every day to get the word to launch. And so you think today's the day, tomorrow's the day, the next day. And then, you kind of like slack off a little bit and it's like, well, it's not happening. And then all of a sudden it pops. And it's not like you get any sort of indicators or warnings. It just happens. And you strap on and you go.
Yeah.
And then, you've got these plans. We did like an assault package and strikes on borders and stuff like that. And it just went. But, going back to, and then it slowed down. It was monotony. You're thinking you're going to get action, and it's nothing. And it's tiresome. It picks up. And when it picks up, you just don't know when it's going to pick up.
Right.
And then, how intense it's going to be. But, going back to the 18-hour flight, and I wasn't part of this, but, I will name the guys, BT Miller, if I can, pardon me, Shoeshine, James Weiss, Ron Canizzo, Krankovich, Spock Johnson, some of these guys. I think Dave Bussell was there with that group too.
Right.
Anyway, it was just trolling and nothing. And then as RIA had popped, these logistics lines had gotten crushed by these guys, interlopers that were coming in, perpendicular to the line and just ambushing them. And that's when the Jessica Lynch saga happened. That's when we had contractors that were hung from bridges and so forth. And then these guys, for hours of not much work, all of a sudden it popped, and they were fighting all night long. So it's something that it may get logged in history. I don't know if it will, but they logged over 18 hours of you could call it. It wasn't all intense fighting, but some of it was. But still, you land, you get gas. You land, you get gas. Then you're not shooting, and then all of a sudden you just explode.
Yeah.
And it's tiresome. And then you do it like several days in a row. But I don't know that anybody. Maybe there are people that can account for that, but can log 18 something hours
That's crazy.
in the seat, with gas. But these dudes are awesome. And then we rotated some pilots. We didn't have many. So for ship, we had like 10 guys that we would rotate through. And then, but we would go, it may be that you hit an objective and you run out of gas before you can really get to your objective. Not gas, excuse me, ordnance and gas, and then go back and get more. You might go Winchester 5 times in a day.
So that's what I want to talk about. So you've got a target that you're going to, but on the way there, you're fighting your way there. So you're expending all the ordnance before you even get there. So you got to stop, gas up. Is there a logistics line behind you? Where are you guys stopping and reloading with gas?
Well, the logistics line moves. You try to monitor it. So if for young guys that are used to flying sections, 2 planes, if you got a 4-plane division task, and then but somebody always knows where that fuel is and such. But so you fly back maybe on a road, could be in a farmer's field or something like that, and get gas. But it's fascinating. But sometimes I'll give a good scenario here. A little place at Diwania, we launched. We had pigeons heading to the objective, and we could see it. We could see the northern part of the city on fire. That's where we want to go. Todd Miller was our division leader. And he's like, we're not going to get in a fight in the city. We're going to skirt around it. Well, we skirted around it, and that's where all, the Iraqi forces were, lighting us up with small arms.
Yeah.
And then so the fight was on. And, but we knew we had to support the grunts. But, we expended about 80% of our ordnance. And then we're like, we called and said, look, we can't get there. We need to get gas and ordnance.
Yeah.
And the funny part of this story is we see two vehicles that are just they're cruising through the desert, kicking up all kinds of dust and everything. Like they're not OGA guys. They don't have a panel on the roof. There's something going on. And so some of the guys swoop down, and these dudes get out, and they start pulling small arms. Like, really? You got 4 snakes, and you're going to get out of your vehicle and then, fire small arms at us. And so we had a little bit of ordnance left. Some of those were rocket shooters. We might have had a PGM or 2 in the bag, a little bit of 20. We just circled the wagons and started strafing these vehicles with whatever we had. And the irony was like, why would you get out of your truck? You got 4 attack helicopters here. And but I recall this, we lit those vehicles up pretty good. And Carl, with his European accent, and I'm going to curse on the radio here, he said, walk home, motherfuckers. And so, anyway, and then we went, we got gas, more ordnance, and we came back. And it was a tank that was pinned down over a bridge near Adiwania. And those guys were taking a lot of fire. And it was interesting because they were trying to replace a track too. It was confusing. Like, what do you get called in on? What can you, what targets can you address?
Right.
You got the collateral damage issue to address. And then it just dawned on us, like, dude, you've got a main gun on that tank. Just hit it. You see it, hit it. And so this tank was disabled, and he was able to swivel the turret and put some rounds on some stuff. And like, it just kind of this weird sort of decision-making process.
Yeah.
And where I'm going with that is, you train, you think you've got it all figured out, but it becomes somewhat impromptu.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe others would argue with me and say, well, that's not real. And yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Get as good as you can and then figure it out when you go.
Well, and it's there. You can improvise things and still make it work, which is what I find fascinating. What did you guys ever have? And obviously not face-to-face interaction, but when you were flying over, were you flying over civilians at all, or was it open desert?
Mix. Open desert's nice if you can get it.
Yeah.
Civilians, interesting when you see it. When I was in Afghanistan, it always, quite frankly, irritated me because women would shelter their kids and they would run in and they're like, like we were the bad guys. And, I understand. I mean, they don't know. But, the open desert's awesome. Civilians are kind of a curiosity. Our division lined up and we started shooting some S-60s. And the family came out of a home, a compound, and, they're holding hands and they're looking, they're just observing while we're, putting some missiles into these, these systems. And I was like, this is so bizarre.
Yeah.
But, interesting times.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, going back to your previous point, we used to, when you and I were youngsters, we were thinking about the Cold War. We were thinking about the Soviets. We were a lot of deliberate planning. And what I found was that didn't really work so much in this counterinsurgency environment. But if you're a good deliberate planner and you can plan for, integrated air defense systems and all these other things, this section type flying where you're, doing counterinsurgency is a lot simpler. But, you have to have those fundamentals and otherwise you can't, if you can do that, you can do the other stuff. You can adapt quickly.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And, that's kind of one of the things for me focusing on, the civilian, what are the Iraqi civilians like 20 years later? Are they better off? Are they worse off? And for us at the time when you're in the cockpit and you really, the whirlwind has been unleashed, you really don't have time to think about any of that stuff. And it never occurred to me, except for one time, what was going on with the people that were just, like you said, they were just out there trying to survive and not get hit by a freaking missile coming off your helicopter, you know?
Yeah, I think it would be mind-boggling to get in their shoes, you know, like, but it's like being on the moon, you know, and we don't understand it. But yeah, they see these aircraft just, I mean, I don't think they're threatened by us. Quite frankly, the Iraqis certainly weren't. The Afghanis, perhaps they were, particularly.
You mean the civilians? Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Because at some level they knew that we were there kind of to help them. Maybe. I mean, I don't know.
Oh, I think they were playing a close hand.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? I don't know. Saddam sucked. The Ba'athist Party sucked. These guys, who knows?
Right.
Can't be worse.
Right.
We're going to survive. We're going to eat, you know, some rice and whatever food we can get, and live to fight tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
man, that's wild.
Yeah, you know, and it's interesting because the force that we fought. I would say initially some motivated, committed Iraqi forces that didn't really like it when their leadership abandoned them.
Yeah.
And then they started facing kind of the heat of a force that just had like all this momentum, you know,
Yeah.
it's just bringing it. And then their communication got broken up, and sort of like, well, what are we fighting for?
Right.
We know we have a despot in control. If the regime's going to crumble. And so it kind of made it hard for them to hold together, but there was an element of people that still wanted to fight. And those were the tricky ones to sort from the ones that wanted to capitulate. And yeah, so they're dangerous still.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Coming from, you know, you're basically at the end of the whip. You're like that. The powers that be, the big states are banging heads up here, and they tell you to jump, and next thing you know, you're jumping and doing your job to the best of your abilities, which is freaking part of the best, you know, the most lethal military force that's ever been. So you're just doing your job out there, and you guys did it super effectively, and we continue to do it. It's just it's an odd thing to kind of look back on it, you know, especially 20 years later. You're like, you know, has things, and you know, Iraq is not really in the news anymore. Afghanistan's really not in the news anymore. Everything's kind of pivoted to China and Russia and Ukraine. But you know, I sometimes wonder, like, you know, what was it? Is it any better over there? I guess is the question. What do you? What's your personal take on?
Well,
that?
I think there's arrogance and hubris, thinking you understand it, and then maybe you get a little bit older, and then you're like, you know, I thought I understood it. I don't understand it. This is the way they operate. This is, you know, human survival. But, you know, I think what we don't get is invading a country is different than doing an operation in a country where you land and, you know, you distribute your forces and so forth.
Right.
But invading a country where you're taking over a leader, you're taking over a sovereign state, where you say, I need this road. I'm going to mow down. I'll take tanks and I'm going to push over all these light poles. I'm going to land aircraft here.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And then try to balance that with humanity, with, you know, law, rule of law, you know, being humane, and being concerned about civilians. But the fact that you can, you know, like take I-5, like, yeah, I'm taking it. I'm going to take that overpass. I'm going to put some equipment up there.
Yeah.
I'm going to mow down some stuff, and I'm coming to your city.
Yeah.
Invasions don't happen that much, and I mean, even like stuff like the Normandy invasion. I know that's high intensity, small arms sort of stuff, but to invade a country is really significant. We've just kind of gotten lost in it. We don't quite understand what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And it inevitably morphs into something that is different than what you thought it would become.
Yeah. They think it's like kind of I'm going to unseat a dictator.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's get back to what I'm hoping to get is what it was like. What's it like in the cockpit for somebody? So you're going and going and going, and I mean, can you give an example? Is there any way to give a comparison to like a regular civilian type? Would it be like a doctor being up for 24 hours a day, operating for those 24 hours while they're on call. I mean, you guys, what was that like, that to go that long in that intensity?
Well, the thing is, there's a lot of monotony. There's a lot of time where you're just like you're dialed into super intensity, like a level 10, or this one goes to 11, sort of deal. And there's nothing, and that's exhausting. And then something trips, but you have to kind of maintain that intensity. And I think it's really hard to sustain that. But you can burn a lot of time when there's a lot of activity. And I mean, like I flew with some guys, and in fact, I've said, and I'll dive them out. Carl, Tank, Trigger, those dudes. Like, man, I'm falling asleep, and like it's the conversation. Like, oh, good, it's not only me. I'm not the only one that's that's just exhausted. Yeah, and but then things will just light off, and so it could be that you have 10 hours of nothing and then 30 minutes of something, or it could be sustained operation. And the other thing is we train to think that everything is going to be precise, that everything is going to happen on this timeline, that we're going to get the TOT plus or minus 30 seconds and blah, blah, blah. But that's not the case. Sometimes the targets are hard, like putting a PGM into something, I get it. But like, human targets that are on the move, vehicles that are on the move, it can be like a hostage crisis or something. Yeah. It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort to kind of like get it.
Right.
Then I think about, going to 2006. That's the time that I particularly frame, because we're looking at the big counterinsurgency fight in Iraq. And, some of the characters that were just dark, and that work was really hard, because guys could fly up a route like Mercury or something like that, the names, and you're just looking for any sort of minute change. And I would say like the crew chiefs and stuff, like they really saw things, but everybody was looking for something, and it could be you fly that route 2 hours, 3 hours, in nothing. And then all of a sudden, like, I see something. And that kind of hard work, it's labor. People don't get it.
Yeah.
But we found something. Somebody dug a hole and they planted an IED, or they put a roadside bomb somewhere. But it's interesting, but I'd much prefer a high intensity sort of, environment.
Yeah. It's like we were just talking about, you're flying along and there's nothing seems to be happening, but you have to maintain a level, and it's very difficult to do that.
Yep.
As opposed to jumping right into it. And I'll give just a small example that I had, and it was not nearly what you went through, but it was, we were sitting around all day just waiting for, my section. And I was the co-pilot, so it wasn't my section, but my pilot section, the section that we were leading. We're sitting around just we were the next up for any type of troops in contact, didn't go. And so we're just sitting around, literally just hanging out in the ready room. I'm writing emails, and then all of a sudden somebody runs in there like, you got to go. I didn't even turn off I was like, do me a favor, close me out. And I ran out. And from that minute, like, it was go. And then to the time we got back was basically an hour and a half. And it was on that entire time. And, and I remember this, and I'm sure I've mentioned this in the past, but, so my job I was the co-pilot at the time. So my job was radios, helping him look out, see what's going on, working the gunners in the back. And, by the time we were done, Citizen, the pilot, he's like, we leave the objective area. We're in the relative safety of open desert before we get back to base. And he's like, dude, take controls. I'm freaking
wiped.
Yeah, he's like, I am wiped out. So I flew us, the 10 minutes back to base or whatever, and he was just spent. And it was because you were just on for an hour and a half. Yeah. It was wild.
Yeah, and tick is a tricky one, because you're I don't want to say you're optimistic, but I don't, the English language, how many words do we have? Close over 1 million. But there's something more than optimistic. Like, I'm going and we're going to get it.
Yeah.
And then you get there and like, the target's gone or whatever. But, you're hoping that the gunfight's sustained just a little bit so you can get on it. But to stay on tick response is super tricky because, you're kitted up, you've got the gator loaded, you got 3 birds, one for backup, but you turn, so you get in the gator, you go, you're probably going 200 meters, maybe 150 meters.
Yeah.
You strap in. You're not actually strapped in.
Right.
You're turning the batteries on. You're hitting the starters. You're going and you're lifting up without being harnessed in. And then one guy's trying to get the GPS spun up, and then you're going and you strap in. And so the idea is to be, I think 6 minutes is about as good as you can do. I flew with Vipers. I'm a Scarface gunfighter, Stinger guy, but Vipers had a real good, 6 minutes is what they strive for.
Yeah.
You're launching it and you're putting a laser on something and you're going to spit out some 20 in my case, some minigun in your case, and then go. And then you're hoping you get there in time to close with something. But often it's not the case. But then you spend time putting sensors on targets. You're looking for that Bolo vehicle and all that stuff. And it's interesting. But I'll go back to 2006. Zerqawi was the guy we were hunting every day. You were praying that we could get Zerqawi. And here's the thing that's weird about that is like, you think that you're going to stumble upon that dude, and be able to do it. Your little section, but all of a sudden you find out, some Air Force guys dropped some, BGUs on him, and like, really, son of a bitch, those dudes.
And that's actually pretty funny because, in the big scheme of things, the Marine Corps is kind of down low.
Yep.
The Air Force. Yeah, the Air Force has got every single contraption you could ever want, and they have no problem doing that. And they might call you in to kind of, but they would rather not.
Yeah, they can't coordinate HIMARS.
Anyway, the Air Force. That's a good, nice little pitch for Woody. So Matt Kidd gave us this coffee today. So thanks, Woody. Story House Spirits.
Yeah, so Matt and I got in trouble together. That's another story. We sat at the long end of the table,
I love it. All right. So let's get back to 20 years. You're kind of having sort of a little bit of a reunion with your boys. And it sounds like about 2 or 3 of them are still active duty.
Yep.
Since then, they really haven't. They've probably deployed back over there, but really, it's things have calmed down, or has there been shooting ever since 06?
Well, a little shooting, but I think policing is probably the right word.
Yeah.
These guys they got in the cycle, they kept going and doing it, but now we're kind of in a rebuilding phase. I can't speak to it, but I know that, we're looking at retraining the force, equipping, and looking at the future.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that means. Everybody's kind of pointed towards the West. I was working, and I'm name dropping. I don't fucking rate it. But I worked for General Dunford when Admiral Willard came through. He was PACOM, and he said, we need to look west. We need to look at the threat that's coming there. We're looking.
What year was this?
It was probably 2009, 2010.
What's crazy is that's 13 years ago, and now all that shit's coming to a head right now.
That's right. Willard was saying we need to divert our gaze from the Middle East and start looking at this threat. The Spratly Islands were not quite like they are right now.
Right.
Philippines didn't have the stress that they have on them, and China wasn't putting really a blue water threat out. I don't really have my opinion shifted so much I don't have an opinion. I talk to like China experts, but they're not experts anymore because that was last year.
Yeah.
But
shit's moving that fast, huh?
Yeah, but I look at what I'm a blue collar guy, but I look at like business programs where they say, well, China only spends, let's just say, $100.
Yeah.
On something, and the U.S. spends $300. Yeah, but you know what? They can make something for $50, so therefore they're spending much more. Really, and then they say, well, we want to be a defensive force. And I'm like, well, you're doing all this blue water stuff. Your sub force is growing.
That's not defensive.
Yeah, it's not defensive, and you're trying to really have a big time blue water capacity for regional influence and more. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't try to second guess it anymore. I just don't.
Yeah. Actually, that's kind of a cool transition. You said you had traveled to a couple of different countries to learn about their businesses.
Yep.
Did you go to any economies like China, or how close did you get to that, or what's?
Yeah, mostly it was in East Asia, but I was in India for a little bit, looking at some of their manufacturing. They have some tie with China, but they're really striving to be their own like entity.
And they're pretty staunch ally with the U.S. still, or no?
It's temperamental.
Yeah,
I think it's temperamental. I'm no diplomat. I mean, I can drink beer with a guy that runs a steel foundry and kind of understand the environment. But they're striving to create their own identity.
Yeah.
And that's just what you have to understand. I think China maybe is post that situation, and I'm going to throw his name out, Brendan Mulvaney. He went to China. He studied. He speaks Mandarin. He's got a PhD from one of their universities. And I don't think that he has a good read on. I mean, he might have a read, but I don't think that anybody can predict what their intentions are. In terms of getting in front of it. And I think it's just relax and let it be what it is, because their intentions are not. They have the long-term plan, the long game plan, that system, because you don't think that way. We don't think that way, quite frankly.
But are we not thinking our way? Are we not thinking that way to our detriment? I mean, I get the sense that we are falling way behind them. It just feels like that. No?
We're getting older.
Yeah.
And we have all the things we need in our homes. We've got appliances, we've got, utensils and everything. We don't need to buy a lot of stuff, but we've gotten kind of hooked on buying cheap stuff, just stuff, and they produce it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how, we could economically wean them militarily. Yeah, if you could do it on a one-on-one, if that's what they want to do, but you have a nuclear option and nobody wants to go there. So what you have is an economic war, but that's going to be fought by civilians and saying we're not going to partake in it.
But that eventually leads to trigger pullers.
It's exactly that's how it always goes down. Yeah. But you and I were in Laos, Vietnam. We watched them. They're building that railway. They're gonna control that peninsula. Yeah,
crazy. All right. So without naming any of your buddies that are still active duty, do any of them talk about that?
No.
Okay.
It's interesting because these guys, they have opinions, but they're in a different fight. They're fighting for money. Yeah. They're fighting for the institution. They're fighting for, training and so forth.
Which is basically peacetime. We're basically, our military is essentially in peacetime.
Yeah, they're trying to implement all these programs and stuff. Yeah. So they got their hands full, but, they know where we're going. They know how to fight. They know,
right.
But they've got their hands full. It's just hard to implement all the programs that they need to that are not associated with warfighting. But good dudes. We're in good hands. I'll say this, The squadrons look great. The aircraft look great. The Marines look good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the one thing I'm worried about is morale.
I couldn't really assess the morale.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this: they look sharp.
Good. Good.
And the aircraft look good. I mean, they look better than when we were flying them. But I mean, I don't know why that is.
Well, yeah, it's because the aircraft are only like 10 years old.
Yeah,
we're flying shit from the 70s.
Well, I'll say this: I was a little humbled that Zulu model Cobra. Shoot, it flies pretty fast, but you can't jerk it around. It will tell on you.
Oh, really?
Like
the big new guy.
Oh, yeah,
wow,
the big new guy. Yeah, so in the Snake, you could. I mean, it's like driving a John Deere tractor in a lot of ways. You know it. You just. But it's not going to rat you out for over torquing and all this other stuff.
And this thing will. It
will, and it's real tricky. It's really maneuverable. You pull the collective a little bit, and it jerks up. You'll go to 75-80% torque with about that much movement, as opposed to a full arm of it, and good sensors. It's top notch. I mean, it's too much for me.
All right, so that's because you're old.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're old and you're out of the game. You're out of shape.
100% NR. Everything else is in the green. We're good. Don't need to know anything.
All right, so this is my personal take. And I'm glad you said that the Marines look good.
They do.
The aircraft look good. It looked like there's still a high level of pride in what they're doing. Thank God. I have zero confidence in the civilian leadership of our military. Zero. And even the General Milley, I mean, some of those guys at the top are just fucking buffoons, in my view. And it's to our detriment. And it's selling out the kids that are on the line that you said look good and are taking pride in their work. And thank God they're still doing that, because I just have no confidence in them.
Yeah, I don't know where I stand. I mean, my opinion's changed over the years. And, like blind confidence to personal opinion. And, I don't know. I don't want to be jaded. I'm not that guy. But, quite frankly, we're sitting here in your spot here. We're having Woody's lovely bourbon and
coffee.
Yeah, coffee. And, you know what? I can make a judgment on that. And I say, take a risk. You're in a position you're not there you're not making money, really, like money. But do something. Make a statement, be convicted. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, but they seem to be convicted to all the wrong things in terms of making a warfighting force, in my view.
Yeah, you retire as a 3-star, 4-star. Guess what? You're going to be like me. You're going to try to find a good country club. You're going to try to go fish for some exotic fish. And
these guys are going to go directly to the networks.
Maybe. But,
yeah, I don't know, Jimmy. I'm glad that you say that, because and every time I talk to my very good friend of mine who I played lacrosse with at Hopkins, he's a Navy SEAL now. He's a lot younger than I am, but every time I talk to him, I come back, I'm like, okay, I think we're okay. Because the stuff that you watch on television, it's nonsense. And it bums me out, because it makes me feel good that it's actually the reality of the situation is not as bad as I'm making it out to be based on what I'm watching on television. And that's on me. I shouldn't believe it anyway, but it's good to hear that the actual kids that are wearing the uniform today are good to go.
There's here's the thing that I find interesting, and it's probably not quantifiable, but these Marines have some swagger. I love it. They're going to the they're going to the 7-day store, or not the 7-day store, the package store, or whatever, they're going to get a sandwich and a Monster energy drink.
Yeah.
But they look sharp. The aircraft look great, and I get it. I mean, I know they're dealing with a lot of different issues culturally, TikTok and social media. But,
Right.
but yeah, they look good. I'm like, yeah, you look great. I love seeing it. The squadron spaces look great. I think that they don't quite know where they're going to go, but they're going to train as hard as they can to get to point X, and then there's going to be a pivot to whatever the threat is.
So, all those young Marines, when they saw an old guy like you, were they like, "Hey, what are you doing here, old man?" And you're like, "Son."
When they call you sir, and you're like, "Oh no,
the
squadron CO is the boss. The battalion commander that's the boss."
I love it.
But whenever they're treating you like a geriatric and asking if you want coffee, and so you're like, "Oh yeah, I'll take a cup of coffee." And I knew that guy in 1990.
Yeah.
But it's good, for the legacy of an institution, to see the young pilots, and then I don't know, it's kind of. You look at them, you're like, yeah, they've got fire. They don't know what's in front of them. They're in this fraternity or sorority, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. But, the things that people used to say to us, like, enjoy your time here. Enjoy your time in the ready room. Be with the people in the ready room. Be good to the ready room. And don't ever leave it. It used to sound like just lip service, but I would say, try to enjoy it somehow. Try to enjoy the companionship you have. Fly a friggin' great aircraft and do an out and in to Santa Barbara and get a lunch on the beach.
Because someday you might be island hopping in the South Pacific.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's awesome. So getting back to this, me feeling a little bit depressed and pessimistic when I watch how just all the nonsense. But then getting back to, okay, I feel good now that there's still kids out there that want to serve. There's still kids. And so one of my very good friends from college lives up in Orange County, and his son is a junior in high school and badly wants to go to the Naval Academy to fly jets for the Navy. And I'm like, that's awesome.
Do it.
And, exactly. And so this kid is so focused on that. And my point being is it's very comforting for me to see that even the young kids, there are still kids that want to serve.
I think that it's a grasp that people don't appreciate. If you want to do it, you want to be Tom Cruise. Yeah, you can do it. Yeah, guess what? I got a dozen friends that or that guy. And, if you want it, do it, but you can't. I'm not saying you have to be like super aggressive, but set a goal and go. I was 18 years old when the recruiter talked to me, and he said, I wanted a poster of a Harrier. And he said, you have to be an officer to do that. And I said, well, I don't know. I can do that. He said, have you ever been in jail? I said, no. What's your SAT? I was like, that's okay. He said, well, let's talk. And I talked to Gunnery Sergeant Beaumont, and so that was my pathway. But that poster, even though I don't want to fly a Harrier, only small guys can do it, Brian. But
you're big bone.
Big bone.
You're an athletic build. Let's say.
Yeah. And but anyway, but I set that benchmark. But I don't know that there's that much visibility for people, for young guys and such. But I mean, if you're not going to be Tom Cruise for it,
right? Yeah, exactly.
If you dig in, you can do it.
Yeah. And I think I've got a very jaded view of things. I got back and so my view is very skeptical of things. And so when I see something that okay, then pure is the wrong word. But when I see something that it's just, people are still wanting to be of service, that makes me feel good.
Yeah, I think
because I would not have changed anything.
No,
I would not have changed absolutely my path. Not one thing about the path that I took. It brought me to a weird place, but I would not have changed it for the world.
Well, I'll tell you this, in my humble opinion, So I flew the simulator, the most sophisticated, I think, Army might argue, attack helicopter in the world. And today I flew it, I hovered it, I flew it, I put rockets on target and strafed with 20 millimeter. And I didn't know how to operate all the sophisticated systems. This generation, they get it. They know how to do that. They know how to employ it, so I have to respect that. And and have faith that they're going to be just as good as you and me.
Yeah.
And
well, it's just our time. Back in our day, we were operating pretty high speed stuff.
Yeah. And
we did it. And just the stuff keeps getting more high speed, and so the kids get more adept at dealing with it. But it's that the old man looking down on the team, saying like, "Can I play with these guys right now?" And I'm not sure if that's the way to look at it. It's more to say, if I was their age, I probably, knowing what I was like at their age, I probably would be fine dealing with all this stuff.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah, I could see that. But aircraft look clean. Ready room looks great. All that stuff. My colleagues from the invasion look awesome. They're smart and
cool.
And I say smart, but I mean
It's the first time you guys have gotten together?
Yeah. And, these guys are, I would say, as a metaphor, they're senators in the organization at this point, So I'm kind of the wild card that, You're
the weirdo civilian that comes in, just blows in from West Texas.
Yep, exactly.
I love it. All right, Jimmy, in 30 seconds, give me your what do you foresee going on in the world?
Well, I will step back to about 4 or 5 years. I studied with a guy named Mansour Doraj, who is from Iran, and he tried to convince me that globalization was going to be the way of the future. And I said, no, sovereignty is always going to be the way, and we're going to protect borders. And unless a business can be sovereign, we can't do it. And so we're starting to see that not be the case, and we're starting to see this kind of chaotic unrest that is unfolding.
Yeah.
And so, but we're always going to revert back to some sort of power structure. And my 30 seconds is going to be like, we're going to go back to borders.
My take on this, having no geopolitical training, is I always say, okay, think about the old Soviet Union. There was 15 countries that were made up the Soviet Union. 15 different countries. How did they keep control over them? Secret police, crazy, no system, legal system whatsoever, and completely tyrannical. That is literally what the globalists want to do with a global government.
Yeah.
How do you govern disparate countries and keep them all under one? You can't do it without sticking your boot on the neck.
Yeah, you can economically have some level of dominance, but then you can always withdraw. In a sovereign state, you're protecting your border, but you have some responsibility to the populace, and for better or worse. But it's never going to meet the idealistic fruition that people think.
I believe that if every country had their own sovereignty and looked out for their own interests, it would be more peaceful.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we look at our own United States and we look at states wanting to influence their own power and be distanced from the federal system. And, you can't blame them. I mean, California is a case in point. It's just seriously, it's reckless, to a taxpayer.
It's a shit show. And I sound like a hypocrite because I absolutely love.
Yeah, I do too.
I love living where I do, 2 miles from the beach.
Awesome,
but it's a shit show.
Yeah.
All right, Jimmy. All right. Well, listen up, brother. What do you think? Do you think we solved anything today? No. But we at least had a good conversation.
Yeah. I would say this to our colleagues. The lads look good on the line.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, my friend. Well, I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insight.
It's waning.
Well, you know what? It is, but it, that's those periods of intensity never ever go away. And it's just really cool to kind of get that out.
Yeah, the last thing I'll follow on that is that my perspective, my co-pilot's perspective, and every other person's perspective is different. And somebody can say, I saw this, and I'm like, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
But everybody has a different experience. And it's intriguing, to kind of understand that about personalities. Like, well, we were all there together. But you saw this and I saw that. Yeah. But nobody's lying. It's just the way they perceive it.
And everybody takes it in differently.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a very good point. Yeah. So, all right, brother, I appreciate it.
All right, man.
This is the Rain Man. If you're in the military, police departments, fire departments, or first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. This is Bruce Jojo Laughlin. This is the Rain Man. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, observations on the world we live in. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.